Okay, hi, good evening. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Slate DraftKings show. We're here Monday through Friday. We're like the Sweat, but not really. We start just after the 4 o'clock Madden Sim, and we pretty much have free reign to discuss whatever the night needs. And that is Week 10, Monday Night Football, Commanders and Eagles to wrap up the week. Second straight week, we get the Eagles in prime time. The last time they played was against the Texans on Thursday night. That feels like a long time ago. And we got the Washington Commanders in action tonight. Brendan Glasheen with Jeff Ulrich. We will be with you until about 6 o'clock. So any questions you might have, YouTube and Twitch, we'll take them. We'll also follow you along over on the DK Nation Twitter streaming platform. So whatever you may have, we will discuss. Jeff, you amped up for this game? Like, what's the temperature in the Jeff Ulrich household about how you're approaching Commanders Eagles?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm always pumped up for a little bit of primetime action. I mean, always a good betting opportunity, getting a few props, whatever, play some single showdown. But just interested to see how the Eagles handle another spot where they're big favorites and if they can cover. I mean, covered as big favorites against the Steelers, obviously. Didn't take care of business in that respect against the Texans, but still put in a pretty solid win. This is a division game for them too. I mean, I think at this point we're just looking to see, are the Eagles going to get tripped up at some point? Is Jalen Hurts going to maybe just have like a bad game? I don't know. I guess it could happen tonight. I mean, the Commanders defense has played a little bit better. They should have won that game against the Vikings. They really should have. So this isn't, what you call a bottom feeder team. I mean, this is still a pretty decent team. Started to play a little bit better. Taylor Heineke, I think, just moves the ball a little bit better with quarterback. They got Dotson back. But, all things considered, still the Eagles. So I think that, when this is all said and done, the Eagles probably will have taken care of business. Just are they going to cover or not? So that's really the question.
Yeah, it's not as quite of a drastic matchup in terms of good versus bad as it pertains to Eagles-Texans. And we all felt Eagles would build a big lead early in the game against Houston on the road, and we thought that thing would be over fast, and it wasn't because the Texans scored first, as many Eagles backers, Eagles bettors feared, and even folks that played some Eagles in DFS. I guess it helped you in a way. Like Jalen Hurts had to throw because his team was trailing, and you got a more complete performance from the Eagles because they had to play closer to 60 minutes as opposed to, all right, maybe we'll see Gardner Minshew in this game. That was not the case. But the Commanders have been feisty here with Taylor Heineke as their quarterback. You mentioned Dotson being back. I don't know. Logan Thomas is starting to find a little something here. Like, is 11 too much to lay though? Still, are we giving the Eagles still too much respect?
I mean, that's the thing, right? You look at the look ahead line on this. It definitely wasn't anywhere near this. And then obviously you just look at what. This opened at 3.5. Wow. So way back when. So look ahead line, obviously, yes, from before, but. I just compare this to the Texans game where, it was sitting at around 12 or 13 and then it got up to 14. But like, I think we got to give the Commanders a little bit more respect. Right. I know it's a road game and stuff too, but it's also an in division game. I would say it's probably a little bit big for me. Like if I'm jumping on a side here, it's definitely the Commanders. I like the way they move the ball a little bit. Now, I think the biggest thing with them, I think they found some consistency on their defense. I don't know if it's going to be enough to hold down Jalen Hurts or force him into making those errors I talked about and maybe sneak out a win, but I think it'll make it close enough. And I think with Dotson back and with the Heineke moving the ball a bit with his legs, Gibson getting involved, I think the Commanders probably cover here. So I do like the 11 on the Commanders. I really don't like betting against the Eagles, but it's a big line, man. I mean, especially for an in-division game. Like any team we're talking about in division, 11 points, that is a lot. So
right. And the Eagles are home, so they're a home favorite in this spot. It's no longer but road dogs have had a good year too. Road dogs have performed well over 500 for the season. Road underdogs this season, 51, 38-1 against the spread this year. Dogs in general have had a great year. What's your feeling on an under? I know the totals moved from 43.5. Most of the money coming in on the under, and unders in prime time, unders at night. That's been the play this year. I feel like we're doing the same thing that we were doing for Texans Eagles. Like, are you more tempted to take a team total under, but that could burn you because the Texans got there, as we found out. The Eagles team total was set at 29.5, and they scored an even 20. Well, not even, but they scored 29 as opposed to 30 to reach their team total a couple of Thursdays ago. That's funny. I'm assuming this number reflects that they think that the Eagles will score and the Commanders won't.
Yeah, I kind of like the Command team total here. I mean, obviously, if I like the spread, I mean, I think they're going to get more than 15 points. I mean, so that is where I would lean. I really don't mind just going over on the game total either, but at the same time, like if I think the Commanders are going to cover, I mean, maybe Pittsburgh stalls out at 24 points and the Commanders end up stalling out at 17, right? Like I think the Commanders team total, it's pretty soft at 15.5. Like I get that, you've got a pretty solid defense, but I mean, you just alluded to the, what Philadelphia allowed in their last game. The Eagles, like obviously they have shutdown corners. They're also down Avonte Maddox, in this game. I think that with Dotson being back, that actually like is a pretty big boost to Washington's chances here of scoring some points. So I like the over 15.5 team total. You can even just look back over the Eagles' last 5 games. They've only held a team to less than this once, and it was the Steelers.
Okay.
Who stink. It was Kenny Pickett, a rookie quarterback. Yeah, I mean this is a bet I'm pretty interested in. And like I was looking at the totals today again. I don't mind going over, but I really like when you look at the team totals, I would rather just go over on Washington. So it's a bet I'm definitely in on here.
4 of the last 5 games, they've hit this number. They lost to Tennessee by 4. That was the last we saw. Well, no, we saw Carson Wentz play the Bears too on Thursday night. The 12-7 game.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was, there's been a lot of bad games like that this year, but that was one.
Bad.
That was maybe the worst.
But that kind of ended the streak on Thursday night because then we got Arizona, New Orleans. Yes. And yes, since we've had a little normalcy as it pertains to not even shootouts, just like competent offense, just a little bit. But Packers 23 points, Colts 17, lost to Minnesota, had a big lead as we all remember, lost 20-17. So that number being at 15.5, they have proved they have been capable in those spots. And in this case, if you think they're going to be trailing, I guess that's the issue with Washington is if you think they're going to get there, can they get there trailing? They trailed 24-0 to this same Philly team week 3, scored 8 points in the fourth quarter. That was all they showed.
Yep. That was with Carson Wentz though. And again, like, I think this is actually like, it's kind of like good timing for them. It's not that the Eagles are that banged up, but like Maddox is a pretty big piece of their secondary. Mm-hmm. Dotson floating around now, just an extra piece. I think that'll potentially open things up, maybe even just a little bit for Terry McLaurin. So, or maybe just for Dotson. We don't really know what Dotson's going to do with Heineke the first time they're together. I believe on as like in regular season games. So I'm sure they practice together. They didn't even have a good rapport practicing together because, again, like rookie with the second string quarterbacks. So there's a lot going on here. And I think it's pretty positive for Washington, what they've been doing.
Yep.
McLaurin's gotten going with Heineke in a game. Antonio Gibson is starting to come back a little bit. Just usage. He's a good receiver out of the backfield. So it gives them a lot of options here. I think there's ways they can kind of neutralize Philly's strengths. And I look at what Washington has done. Like you said, 17 points or more each of their last 3 games with Heineke as quarterback. Mm-hmm. They got to 17 points in like 3 quarters against Minnesota. I mean, again, they were kind of sitting on that lead. I just still don't know how they lost that game, but it's I like the over here. I do.
Don't know how they lost it, but how the Vikings just keep winning.
They do.
The situations don't look and look. I think the other thing too, and we'll go to DFS here in a second, unless you got some player prop thoughts. But real quick on Washington, they're a half game out of the 7 spot in the NFC. They're 4-5. They're a full game out. San Francisco is 5-4. So with a win, they'd pull a half game in front of the Niners, which that's pretty big. Also, they haven't won a division game yet. So this is desperate. You go 0-2 to Philadelphia and 0-3 in the division. I'm not saying they're going to win the game, but I'm with you on the side. I think Washington is going to throw everything they can at this team because they have to. This is a big spot. You can't be 0-3 in the division. Well, they could be, but they would prefer not to be. And they'd have to do everything they can to put themselves in a situation not to be. Do you like any props before we move on? I think Steve Buchanan, our friend Steve, put out the most bet props tonight. Jalen Hurts over 1.5 passing touchdowns. Jake Elliott, extra points made. Devontae Smith, receptions. Heineke, touchdowns. Wow, Heineke over a half passing touchdown is minus 320. That's nuts. And then Jalen Hurts really over rushing yards.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I mean, people are on the Jalen Hurts train here. I mean, I threw out that bet on Sunday when it was plus 105. I mentioned on the sweat this morning, like not as bullish on it at this number. I don't think it's like a must play or anything like that. I think the appeal is gone. It's actually down to minus 125. I'm not suggesting you get on the other side necessarily, but like it's not a prop I'd necessarily jump on now that the plus money is gone.
Yep.
I still like Hurts in this game. You know, you can look like pass completions, I think is actually a better prop to take the over on him right now. It's minus 120, but you need 20 pass completions. He's got all his weapons out there. You know, they have a passing back. Kenneth Gainwell usually catches a couple passes. Like I just think it's way easier for him to get to that than the 2 passing touchdowns, which are so variable. I mean, I like it because, you know, Washington's secondary, not great. They've basically allowed 2 passing touchdowns and, you know, their last 5 or 6 games here, it's been pretty consistent. And, you know, Hurts is just being very efficient, but around the goal line, but he could just pick it up with his legs in this spot. So if you're looking for Hurts, I like the over completions right now. And I mean, I think that with everybody kind of on some overs here, like in this spot, I mean, like, let's look to take a couple unders. I mean, I mentioned Jalen Hurts, like he hasn't gone over this rushing total in a couple games. I mean, under 40 yards rushing. I don't hate that. I would probably rather take the Miles Sanders under on rushing total. I think that's a bet I probably will be on. You know, Washington's defensive front, 7th fewest rushing yards against this year to opposing running backs. You know, like I mentioned, Gainwell coming on a little bit, not really coming on, but just still taking like 20-25% of the snaps, obviously with the rushing quarterback as well. So I think if I'm fading anyone right here, it's Miles Sanders. It's not necessarily the best matchup. I think that one thing Washington's definitely going to try and slow the Philly rush attack down a little bit. And just force Jalen Hurts to try and beat them through the air, which he probably will. But I think that's their best path to victory. So looking at a Miles Sanders under there, and potentially like an AJ Brown under as well. I don't hate. Again, like you look at some of these props and what people are betting. I mean, like AJ Brown touchdown. I mean, that's a thin bet, but I think it's a good spot for potentially like Devonta Smith to get going again.
I would agree.
You
Plus 200, I think, anytime touchdown scorer tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. I mean, touchdowns are variable. You know, you're never really getting like the best line because it's a variable thing. And
I see. You're talking receiving yards and receptions now. Okay,
I'm just talking Devonta Smith in general. I think that if you're going to make one prop bet, it's probably, you know, the yardage is a lot safer, obviously, than the touchdown. So over 54.5 yards, I don't hate it. I think that he gets going tonight either way. So yeah, I'm looking to hit a couple unders if I'm being dead honest right now. I think some of these have moved a little bit during the week too. So, but we could certainly talk, you know, like a little bit more longer shot bets here too. Cause I mean, look, you can go same game parlay. We could talk touchdowns. I think that you know, you want a little bit of longer odds exposure. You should look to the Washington tight ends. I mean, John Bates plus 1,600, Logan Thomas plus 650. I think both those guys are in play. So, you know, we're just talking one touchdown. You know, those are odds I would be looking at rather than probably going to go shorter on like a receiver.
Okay. No, but it makes sense. If you like the unders in the rushing game for Philadelphia, then you like, and look, the running backs in Philly are versatile, right? They're pass catching guys. Sanders, not as much Gainwell, but Sanders, Boston Scott, it bodes well for a Jalen Hurts over 19.5 completions in this game. So do you have a same game parlay in mind that you'd like to share?
No, not really. I mean, I was
Okay.
just, we can make one. I mean, we could do that.
I mean,
If we could
why the hell
take,
not?
why not? I mean, like, we could look for our,
Ooh, the number moved to 11.5. That's interesting. As we
I
speak.
mean, we could start with the Commanders, covering 11.5.
Okay.
This might be tough to do now. We can do it. We'll do it. Get our Jalen Hurts completions in. Go 20
Yep,
plus.
I like that quite a bit too. Let's go to passing.
Not getting the greatest number.
Jalen Hurts. Where are you? Here we go. Completions. 20 plus minus 185. That's annoying.
Yeah, not getting the greatest odds there, but we could take it. And then we need something to juice it up. So we might as well look for a
Touchdown score
prop.
Okay.
So what are we
Do we
looking
go
at for
to-
touchdowns
do
here?
we go
Probably
to- do we go to-
might as well throw Devonta Smith in there.
I was just going to say, okay,
bullish on-
Devontae.
We're going to be bullish on Hurts. I mean, get Devonta Smith in there. That gets us our completions. We should probably even, like, honestly, if we're taking the Commanders to cover, I almost want to throw a Commander touchdown in there and make this like real juicy. Who's a good touchdown target for the Commanders here?
Logan. It's Logan Thomas.
Okay. Well, all right. Let's do it. I mean, I'm fine. What does that get us to? That gets us to plus 5,000. So Devonta Smith, Logan Thomas, Commanders to cover, and then Jalen Hurts are 20 plus passing completions. All right. So hey, you're looking for something to throw a little bit of money on. I mean, yeah, there it is. I mean, if we took Logan Thomas out and put Gibson in, that's still 1,800. So if you want a little less variance there, Antonio Gibson, getting more involved, playing a few more snaps, that might be the easy way to go. But yeah, Logan Thomas, he's still out there. I think red zone target, he's still pretty viable. So anyways.
All right, there we go. Well, there's your same game parlay build.
But yeah, well, a couple touchdowns on both sides, get the Commanders to cover, easy money.
So I would imagine that you're fading running backs in showdown.
Yeah, no. So for showdown, oh, my thing closed here. Just give me one sec. But yeah, mainly fading Sanders, I think, in this spot.
Okay.
I like the quarterbacks more for the captains for sure. If you are, if you're looking to take a shot with a non-quarterback, I would definitely think about the receivers in this game. Probably, Smith. Looking down, maybe McLaurin as well is probably the top two, just in terms of price. And I have a little bit of interest in Antonio Gibson from a running back perspective. Again, he can really show up in the passing game. He's had some big passing days, 6-7 catches. I could see that happening here. I think that Gibson as like a pass catcher could really pay off. And if he finds the end zone, it's definitely viable, right? Like that he could account for a lot of the scoring for Washington. So Gibson's viable. I think my favorite is probably just taking Heineke. He's basically $5,000 cheaper than Hurts. He still gets some rushing upside. If Hurts ends up throwing, or Sanders falls in the end zone, maybe like Gainwell gets a touchdown or something, or maybe the Philly defense ends up. But I don't know. Maybe this game is just like 20-17. It's close, and Heineke ends up rushing for a touchdown instead. I think that there's scores between Hurts and Heineke. There's a lot of scenarios where it's just not a big gap, or even Heineke, puts up the same kind of numbers that Hurts does. So I think Heineke's in play. Obviously, Hurts is always in play. When you have a complete, like, dynamic two-way quarterback, he's always in play for showdown. And then I think for receivers, again, I would probably look to bypass AJ Brown just because there's similar upside with Smith and I think similar upside with McLaurin there at cheaper prices. So,
by the way, double-digit underdogs on Monday Night Football in the last 20 years are 27, 13, and 2 against the spread. Also, favorites of 7 or more. They're winning games, but they're not covering. They are 9 games under 500. Favorites of 7 points or more are 12 and 21 against the number. It is the least profitable start for touchdown favorites in the last 2 decades. So that is kind of why we're buying in on this dude and the Commanders tonight to keep it rolling. I mean, look, I get it. Bookmakers know all this information too. I just can't. Like, it was even like last night. I know Justin Herbert had his top 2 weapons out, and they've been sketchy. up front on both sides, but it's just the number to me is just too big. Do not give Washington a look in this game, showdown or betting wise.
It's yeah, that was an interesting end to that game too, right? Because San Francisco just about covered. Like it was they just about did it, and they well, yeah.
And as a Chargers backer last night, you're probably thinking, why did I trust Brandon Staley? They did not use their timeouts. No. They wasted 40 seconds off the clock. If you watched that game last night, they had an opportunity to get the ball back, which we know their defense held up. They let the clock run to the 2-minute warning and took their sweet freaking time. I didn't understand it. They had 3 timeouts in the 2-minute warning. I understand that, but you could have used the timeout to save 40 more seconds. I didn't get it. Oh,
yep.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Like, it's crazy. But I'm like, this is why they were 8-point underdogs. Because this guy, at the end of the game, when they're trailing, likes to do weird. I'm ready to swear. I'm sorry. He's ready to do weird stuff. They could have punted the ball too, and they say, "Well, let's go for it from our own 20."
It's I mean, I go back and forth on the Chargers. They're probably the team I go back and forth on the most. I love Justin Herbert, like I really do. I mean, he doesn't win games at the rates that he should, but
that's the uniform to me, not the player.
I know, and I usually defend quarterbacks who people say, "Oh, he doesn't win games." Like it's a team game. I mean, when it comes down to it. He's just great to watch, but like the Chargers as a team, they got a lot of talent, a lot of positions, but man, like, they
didn't score a point, by the way, in the second.
It's always something. Like it's always something. Either like the rush defense falls to just gets shredded, or their coach makes a mistake, or Herbert himself sometimes could just make a mistake, like he did against the Chiefs with that pick 6. Like they should have won that game. So yeah, Chargers are. Oh man, like I understand why a lot of people love them and love Herbert. And I like Herbert too. He's probably one of my, if not my favorite player to watch. He's definitely top 5. So, but yeah, that was it's probably another game like that they could have won. And they really let San Francisco just kind of take it away from them. And San Francisco was a good team. It's no shame losing to the 49ers, but at some point, if you want to take the step up as a franchise, as a quarterback, you got to do the Mahomes thing. You got to go win game and go in there and be like, when everyone's down on you, you got to win the game. Just like, the Chiefs did last year in the playoffs against the Bills, so I don't know. We'll see. The Chargers, I just go back and forth on. I was ready to bet them in the Super Bowl after the first quarter. And then it's like, well, what's the point? So.
Yeah, that was my way, by the way, of transitioning to the rest of the league and what happened yesterday. Yeah. So I think we got our betting breakdown, our DFS breakdown of tonight's game. So are you willing to go back to the well and take the Chargers +7 Sunday night against the Chiefs at home, which this was a compelling game. Week 2, I think that was the debut of Amazon.
It was week 2, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was the second. No, that was the debut of Amazon because opening night was Buffalo Rams on NBC. So that was the Amazon debut, week 2, Kansas City and LA. And it was a close game.
Oh, it was really close. Chargers should have won that. I mean, they outplayed
another one they should have won.
They outplayed them, but they also had their full complement of receivers.
Good point.
So I don't know.
Need 7.5 or 8, it feels like, maybe.
What's that?
It almost feels like you need that 7.5 or 8 to have any faith to take the Chargers.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think where the money's going to come in on this. I think that people are probably just going to end up siding with the Chiefs. Chiefs have looked really good of late. They
covered yesterday. They covered yesterday. Typically, Mahomes is not covering a big number. Normally, he's covering the short numbers, not the big ones.
And it was a close cover. I mean, they only covered by a point, I think. But regardless, you're right. They took care of business either way. I mean, that game wasn't close. It was basically over after half. I mean, you put Jacksonville down, they're not going to come back against you. I would still side with the Chargers here. It's it's a lot of the same things going on in that game. Chargers potentially could get back Keenan Allen as well. Potentially. He may only play 2 snaps, but regardless, it's a division game. You still got Justin Herbert on the other side. Mm-hmm. You look at what the Chargers did last week. They're in a tough spot on the road. They still covered. Now you're asking the Chiefs to go in and cover a bigger number. Again, really like what the Chiefs have been doing. They look good, but I would side with the Chargers here. They played them really tough in week 2. And I think, the games were close against them last year. I think they split 1-1. So this is pretty much it for the Chargers. So
Yeah.
that is maybe the other thing factoring into this. Like maybe we'll see them take a step up. I don't know. But I'd side with LA right now. I mean, that's just my lean for the start of the week. I do think the money will come in on the Chiefs though. So again, you mentioned the 7.5 number. That's probably when I'll be looking to jump in. Definitely watching that number. Saw where it opened, and we'll see where it goes.
Mahomes in his career as a favorite of 3.5 or more, 27-31-1 against the number, under 500 as a favorite of 3 or less, or an underdog, which doesn't happen often. 17-5-1.
The big numbers with the Chiefs. I know they got done last week, but again, it was close. And this is just now we're on the road, and we got the Chargers. So
based on what happened yesterday, we used the Monday show to kind of react to yesterday, but we can also use yesterday to get ready for next week. And Minnesota's a home dog to Dallas after winning yesterday. That seems weird. It opened at 2. But is this the ultimate? Is this the letdown spot for Minnesota? It's kind of like Seattle. Like Seattle Geno finally kind of didn't look right against Tampa. It was because it was just time. Is that what this line is? It's time. Minnesota's going down. Dallas bounce back spot in a dome in mini. I don't know how else to look at that other than that.
Yeah, I mean, what does Dallas want to do? They want to run the ball down your throat a little bit, try to get some turnovers on defense, get some pressure going. Minnesota's going to come and obviously just do their Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins thing, and hope that carries them. We saw that secondary against Dallas get burned last week by Christian Watson for some big games. I don't know, man. It does seem like a bit of a weird line, doesn't it? The money's starting to come in on the Vikings already. I don't really want to bet against the Vikings, but I'm of the same mind as you, where, I don't think the Vikings are going undefeated the rest of the year, even if they are, a real contender, and that Jefferson connection is just going to carry them. At some point, a team like Dallas will throttle them. You know what I mean? They'll get Pollard going. They'll sack Kirk Cousins. He'll throw a pick 6, and it'll be, they'll lose by 12. So, if it wasn't
also
Mike McCarthy,
that Davis guy, I don't know who he is. So I'm not going to pretend I know who he is. Whoever filled in for Zeke, he was phenomenal in the game yesterday.
Oh, for sure. And Dallas almost could have won that game, right? It's their second, obviously, NFC North game in a row, but yeah, no, I would actually side with the Cowboys here. Again, the only thing that's stopping me, I just really don't like going with Mike McCarthy, but we're not really going with the public here either. I think that the public, this is almost one of those spots where it's like everyone's starting to pile in on the Vikings now. They just got a great win. Now they're at home. There is a lot of momentum with this team, but they really didn't deserve to win last week either. And playing, I said this against I've said this before against the Bills. When you play the Bills, it's a tough game. It was with Tennessee, and the week after Tennessee played, you saw, or maybe it wasn't Tennessee. I can't remember what game I'm talking about now. Anyways, playing the Bills is tough, is basically what I'm getting at here. And the Vikings are coming off a tough game, and it sometimes it hurts teams the next week, and I think that's probably the scenario here with Dallas. That Dallas probably comes in. They were able to run it and just to put up a ton of points on Green Bay. And now they've got another NFC North opponent. Mm-hmm. I think the Vikings defense still a little bit overrated as well in that regard. So yeah, I'm siding with Dallas here. Again, we've got the early money coming in. I think a lot of people, looking at Minnesota is just undervalued, but I think it was after the Baltimore game I was talking about. I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I'm playing Buffalo, always a tough matchup. And I think it's a tough spot to bounce right back for the Vikings.
Well, the week after Green Bay played them Sunday night, folks thought, okay, they hung in there. Aaron Rodgers covered, and then they went and lost and only scored 9 points against the Lions. The Jets went to the bye. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry. Go ahead. Finish your thought. I was just saying, you're kind of making my point here. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's like you invest a lot into that game, and a lot comes out of it from a strategy standpoint, game planning. You kind of throw a lot at them because they're a giant and they're a game you get up for, and then the following week it might not go great. Now, Kansas City might be the exception because Kansas City lost 24-20. And then the following week, that was a 425 kick. The following week, Kansas City throttled San Francisco, like destroyed them.
Yep. So, I mean, there's exceptions. It's not a hard and fast rule. I just think with a team like Minnesota as well, they're a little bit older on defense. It is a big game for them. I mean, they got up for it. They grabbed their win against Buffalo. Mm-hmm. Now you got kind of an angrier Dallas team with a lot of talent on defense, potentially going to make this a rough spot for Cousins. So, did this game get? Oh no, I was going to say for some reason I was about to bring up the primetime aspect, but it's not a primetime. It is an afternoon game for Kirk Cousins. Yep. A lot of people will be watching it because there's only like 3 afternoon games, and one of them's the Raiders and the Broncos, which no one's going to watch. Even me, I'm not going to watch that. And then the Bengals and the Steelers, which again, I don't really need to see the Steelers.
Yeah, that had a lot of hype week 1. That was up for game of the year after week 1. The way that went unfolded.
Fantastic game week 1.
Yes,
didn't end well for Bengals fans, but
right. So, I mean, if you think Pittsburgh still has a sniff to figure out their stuff, I doubt it. There was a nice win for Mike Tomlin off of extra rest and getting his team in the right spot against New Orleans, and they got healthier too with their with Watt being back. But yeah, I mean, Vikings Cowboys, that's America's game of the week on Fox, and Kirk Cousins will be center stage. Then again, Dak Prescott made some errors against Green Bay in a big spot.
Sure. No, and look, I mean, again, like I said, I spoke hesitantly. It is the Cowboys. They've got McCarthy as coach. They certainly don't have a coaching advantage, but yeah, I think it's a natural letdown spot for the Vikings. Let's leave it at that.
What else catches your eye based on what happened yesterday from a future standpoint, a game that you are looking at this week that you have a strong opinion on? Buffalo is already 9.5 point favorites against Cleveland. That was at 8.5 yesterday. So that's moving in the direction of Buffalo. So folks really like the Bills to bounce back despite their quarterback. Now, Allen looked fine. I still think they overuse him. And they're playing a team that has a great running game in Cleveland. Now, the Browns didn't play their best game against Miami, and that's a Miami defense that is somewhat vulnerable. So I think the score looked better for Cleveland than it really should have. Like the Browns were lucky to score even in the 20s, but I think that's a credit to the Dolphins letting up defensively. But Buffalo being almost 10-point favorites to Cleveland, can they match their ground game? They don't have a ground game. They rely way too much on Josh Allen. I know Singletary scored 2 touchdowns. If you have him in fantasy, yippee. Like, I get it. He scored the touchdowns, but they don't have a ground game. They don't run the ball. They don't know how to win the games. Like these close games, they just say, Josh, run and make magic. It's kind of sad. They're going to run this guy into the ground, I think, if they're not careful.
Yeah, they could. I mean, I'm kind of with you again. Like you've still got a banged up Josh Allen. I mean, 9.5 points is a lot. The Browns can kind of run on anyone with Nick Chubb. Yeah, I mean, again, it's like the perfect. It's the kind of. It's just a lot of negative sentiment around the Browns. But I mean, if they kept that game close and with the Bills and with Jan's injury, you figure like that's just worth 2 points alone. Probably how this game opens. So getting the Browns at a good buy low spot. Because I'm really gonna have to watch the injury news on Josh Allen here. That's something to really monitor. It could go south. They could hold them out for a game too. I mean, they could be like, oh, it's didn't get better. We got to pull the plug now. We got to rest them. So I think there's actually a lot of factors going into like just taking some action on Cleveland 9.5. I think this line could fluctuate during the week, much like the Minnesota line did, right?
Yep.
So just buying in now with those 9.5 points. I'd be fine with that. What did you say? And you mentioned what it opened at. I can't remember what it opened at yesterday.
This was at 8.5 yesterday. So right. That's a great point because the way the line moved this weekend, I think in the afternoon on Saturday is when it got to 4 or 4.5. Minnesota plus 4.5 points. Or maybe it might have been 3.5, pardon me, 3.5 on Saturday. And then when we found out Allen would be active, we still didn't know if he was going to start. That was not decided yet. So there were some 6s and 6.5s out there before kickoff at 1:00 yesterday. It's a great point. I mean, look, you can't do it over if you're Buffalo, but don't you maybe look at this and go, if we can keep him out a week, but the problem is they lost the game to Minnesota, and now they really can't mess around because they're the 5 seed in the AFC. Or they're the 6. They're the 6 seed. They're the 6 seed now in the AFC. So
I mean, they can't mess around, but at the same time, like if his elbow's hurt, his elbow's hurt,
you
right?
got to get him right. I know that's fair.
So,
but can you beat Jacoby Brissett at home with Case Keenum? I would like to think so.
Yeah, I mean they could, and I think that's the point, right? But at the same time, you know, if Case Keenum's starting, I mean the Browns are going to dip down to like 3.5 points or something. Like it's gonna be a massive move. So yeah, this Lions Giants game is really interesting. I mean the Giants were, I think they got up to 5-point favorites at home versus the Texans.
Yep.
I think the Lions coming in, and they're only 3-point favorites. I don't get it, to be honest. I think New York's just getting disrespected here. Like, I mean, I don't. You know, the Lions beat the Bears. Big deal. Yeah, everyone's putting up 31 points against the Bears. You know,
and they won because of a missed extra point.
Exactly right.
Well,
so I don't.
And the other thing too is the Bears. The Lions watch the Bears do Lions stuff.
Right.
Like that's what happened.
The
Lions were like, oh, someone else other than us is doing us. So that's what let us be in this game. Thank you, Bears. And that's how they won the game.
It's a weird line. It's, you know, we're basically saying that like the Giants are only getting favored here because of home field. So,
yep.
You know, I'm not like super high on the Giants. I mean, I do think that they're kind of ripe for a potential like end of the season crater. They got some really tough, just basically all division games to end, and their division is tough this year. So, but like Saquon Barkley is going to just get the ball 30 times in this game, and the Giants defense has been super good at just, you know, limiting opponents. And I mean, the Lions basically, I mean, you got Jared Goff on the road here, so I got to side with New York here. You know, this is going to be a popular bet. I maybe dive into this one a little bit, but that line still surprises me just completely what we saw last week, just because of what we saw last week. And then
I'm curious if that moves to 3.5 or 4 if all the action comes in on the Giants. But yeah, I hear you.
I'm going to be taking a pretty hard look at this Eagles line after this game too.
Okay. Home against the Jeff Saturday led Colts.
Yeah, it's a short week for the Eagles, but like, I mean, like the Colts still suck. I mean, like it's not like Jeff Saturday. They got they have the good. It's a feel good story. It's one thing to beat the Raiders, you know, like a franchise so torn apart by their head coach and just discombobulated everywhere, and basically just eating itself from the inside at this point. You're going to be facing a well-oiled machine next week in the Eagles. And if by chance the Eagles lose this game, they're going to hammer the Colts next week. So I'm going to be taking a pretty hard look at this line. I think that this should be like, this just feels low. I mean, it just feels low. Like, I mean, we're talking about the only undefeated team in the NFL.
Yep.
You know, Matt Ryan is going to be a quarterback probably, right? Like,
yeah. Why would you go back to
everyone likes Matt Ryan because Jeff Saturday is the coach now? I mean, like, so the Eagles here, they might just be a team you want to just jump on even before this game. You know, and if the other thing is the Eagles win big, I mean, this probably jumped 8.5.
That's what I was going to ask you. If you had to make a guess about how tonight goes,
right?
How do you wait or do you play it now? That's what I was going to ask.
You can probably wait because I think waiting is usually. I mean, if Hurts gets injured, then you're stuck with just a terrible number, right? So it's probably good to wait, see if you can get it in game. I can't, you know, the lines probably won't stay up, obviously, but you know, you could get it after. It may not move that much, even at 8.5. Like I said, like I'd be fine with that at 8 points or something. I really would.
Also,
yeah,
keep this in. It's probably not available yet, but keep in mind, outside of the game against the Raiders, the Colts are 1-9 against the first half spread. So if you like, I think a lot of folks that like the Eagles tonight are taking them first half -6.5. That was what the line was at earlier in the day. So if there is a way for you to hop in on a first half line, which I doubt because the Eagles have not played to finish week 10 yet, if you can quickly jump in and get the Eagles just to be up a touchdown against Indy, that might be a way to play it too. If you don't want to have to lay more than a touchdown, you can take the first half line because the Colts stink against the first. They stink in general, but they stink against the first half number. 1-9 against the first half spread. They've only hit one first half spread over their last 12 first hals, dating back to last year. So they don't start really well. And I think Jeff kind of nailed it. They did it against the Raiders, and they are in disarray right now. Okay, good stuff, man. We got to get out of here. Great work.
Yeah, we do. Jeez, that went by quick.
Yeah, it did. It did. A little bit of everything about NFL Week 10, and also a look ahead to Week 11. We are back tomorrow. I think Lamarca here, Gary in here. I'll be here. Whoever it is, we'll be back for the slate. Again, you can watch the Sweat at 11 a.m. Eastern time on our platforms, YouTube, Twitch, and also streaming on the DK Nation Twitter page. For Jeff Ulrich, Brendan Glasheen, thanks to Eamon and Daniel behind the scenes. You all have a great night. Good luck. See you later.